It was supposed to be a big night for Amanda. Her agency had just landed a massive client, and of course, they had to celebrate. As usual, she was the star of the show, chatting it up, smiling at everyone. I've been to enough of these events to know my place. Hang back, smile, and nod when someone makes small talk with me. Honestly, I didn't mind. Amanda always liked being the center of attention, and I figured this was her night. But something was off. I noticed it when I saw her across the room, standing too close to Marco. He was one of her clients, a real estate guy, flashy as hell, always bragging about his deals and the sports cars he collected. I never liked the guy, but Amanda insisted he was just great for business. At first, I thought I was just imagining things. They were laughing together, leaning in like they had some private joke, but I shook it off. Amanda had always been friendly at these parties. It's her job to schmooze, right? But as the night went on, they stayed glued to each other. The way Marco's hand grazed her back didn't sit right with me. I watched from the corner of the room as she whispered something in his ear, and he grinned like he just won the lottery. My stomach twisted, but I still told myself I was being paranoid. It's just a party, I thought. She wouldn't do something like that. Still, the whole ride home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. When I asked her about Marco, she brushed it off with that usual laugh of hers, the one she used when she didn't want to talk about something. "Oh, come on, Jack," she said, rolling her eyes. "It's just business. Don't be silly." But something in her tone didn't sit right with me. The days after that party, I couldn't get the image of Amanda and Marco out of my head. I tried to let it go, tried to be the cool, trusting husband. But something was gnawing at me. You know that feeling when everything looks fine on the outside, but deep down, you just know something's off? That was me for weeks. Amanda seemed normal, at least at first. Busy with work, late-night meetings, dinners with clients. She always had some excuse lined up. I didn't want to be the suspicious guy. I wanted to believe she was just doing her job, climbing the ladder, being successful. But then there were little things I started noticing. Her phone was glued to her hand more than usual. She'd get these texts at weird hours and tilt the screen away from me when she replied. A few times, I caught her grinning at her phone like a teenager. And then there were the sudden business trips that popped up out of nowhere. One night, after she'd gone to bed, I grabbed her phone. I knew it was wrong. Snooping isn't exactly the high ground in a marriage, but I had to know. Her phone was locked, but she used the same passcode for everything, so it wasn't hard to get in. And that's when I saw the texts. A thread with Marco, full of late-night messages. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow, winky face, and last night was amazing, baby." That word, baby, hit me like a punch to the gut. I scrolled up, my hands shaking. The texts weren't just casual work talk, they were explicit, like something out of a bad romance novel. Everything hit me at once. I just sat there, staring at the screen, trying to process what I was reading. I couldn't believe it, but there it was, in black and white. Amanda wasn't just working late. She wasn't just dealing with clients. She was having an affair with Marco. I put her phone back, careful not to leave a trace that I'd been looking. I couldn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I decided to wait. To plan. After that night, everything changed for me. I went from feeling hurt to angry, and then something else took over, a cold, calculated determination. I wasn't going to just confront her and let it all explode into a screaming match. No, that was too easy for her. If she thought she could cheat on me and walk away without consequences, she had another thing coming. So I played the part of the clueless husband. I didn't want her to suspect anything, not yet. I needed time. The first thing I did was start moving our money. Amanda had been careless. Over the years, we built up joint accounts, savings, investments. But she never paid attention to the details. I handled all the finances. So while she was out having her business dinners, I started slowly transferring money from our joint accounts into new ones, all in my name. A few thousand here, a few thousand there, nothing too obvious, nothing that would raise any alarms. At the same time, I started looking into Marco. I knew there had to be more to him than just his flashy cars and expensive suits. I started digging, searching online, talking to some people I knew in his line of work. Turns out, Marco wasn't as clean as he pretended to be. The guy had a shady past, fraud, bankruptcies, shady deals that somehow disappeared off the record. It didn't take long to realize that Marco wasn't just a real estate guy. He was a con artist who got lucky a few times and never got caught. Perfect. Now, with the dirt I had on Marco, I started piecing together a plan. I was going to hit them where it hurt, financially, legally, everything. The goal wasn't just to get back at Amanda for the affair. It was to ruin them both. Amanda had been careless in more ways than one. She often talked about work, sharing details she really shouldn't have. Insider information about clients, about deals her company was working on. Stuff that, if handled the right way, could land someone in serious trouble. She never thought I was really paying attention, but I was. And now, I had everything I needed to frame her and Marco for insider trading. Once I had all the pieces in place, the real work began. I knew this had to be slow and precise. One wrong move, and everything would come crashing down on me instead of them. I couldn't afford any mistakes. I started by opening a few credit cards in Marco's name. It wasn't hard. His shady past made it easy to fake the documents I needed. I used those cards to make some suspicious purchases, nothing too crazy, but enough to raise a few red flags if someone were to dig into them. Then I created a fake email account, pretending to be Marco, and used it to send emails to Amanda. They were flirty at first, then more serious, talking about big deals they were working on together, investments that were sure to pay off. I knew Amanda was careless enough to reply, and she did. She sent back details about her agency's upcoming projects, things she wasn't supposed to share. That was all I needed. I saved those emails, making sure to leave just enough of a trail to make it look like they were in on something shady together. Insider trading, fraud, it didn't matter, as long as it looked bad. Then, I waited. At home, I kept acting like nothing was wrong. I smiled, laughed at her jokes, even took her out to dinner a few times. She was too busy with Marco to notice the change in me. I watched her closely, waiting for the right moment to strike. Finally, after a few weeks of setting things in motion, I made my move. I forwarded the fake emails between Amanda and Marco to an anonymous tip line at the SEC. I knew they would take the bait. I had carefully planted enough evidence to make it look like Amanda and Marco were knee-deep in illegal activity. All I had to do was sit back and wait for everything to unfold. Once the tip was sent, all I could do was wait. I went about my daily routine like nothing had changed, but inside, I was on edge. Every time Amanda came home, every time she kissed me goodnight, it took everything I had not to snap. I wanted to tell her I knew everything, scream it in her face, make her feel the same pain I was feeling. But I kept my cool. Patience was key. Days turned into weeks, and Amanda kept living her double life. She'd still head out for client dinners, always dressed a little too nicely for work, always coming home a little too late. I'd catch her sneaking glances at her phone, texting someone with that same stupid grin on her face. I knew it was Marco, but I played dumb. I even asked her about work, pretended to be interested in her day. She fed me the same lies, how stressful everything was, how she was just trying to land another big deal. If she noticed me pulling away, she didn't mention it. Maybe she was too wrapped up in her affair to care. Then one morning, everything changed. Amanda had just left for the office when I got a call. It was her. She sounded panicked, out of breath. "Jack," she said, her voice trembling, "something's happened at work. The SEC showed up. They're investigating me." I acted shocked, of course. "What? Why? What's going on?" They think I'm involved in insider trading." Her voice was shaking now. "I don't know how this happened. Marco. I need to talk to Marco." There it was. The panic in her voice, the way she immediately turned to him for help. She didn't call me her husband. No, her first instinct was to call her lover. I kept my cool, played the part of the concerned husband. "I'm sure it's a misunderstanding," I said, trying to sound comforting. "We'll figure this out." But inside, I was grinning. This was the moment I had been waiting for. After Amanda's frantic call, I knew the wheels were in motion. The SEC wasn't just sniffing around, they were coming for blood. And the best part? Amanda had no idea that I was behind it all. She thought it was just some random mistake, some mix-up she could smooth over. But I knew better. This was just the beginning. Over the next few days, things spiraled fast. Amanda was constantly on edge, pacing around the house, talking to her lawyer, trying to figure out how it all went wrong. She kept blaming Marco, saying he must have messed something up, or maybe one of his shady deals had caught up to him. It didn't take long before she turned on him completely. One night, I overheard her on the phone with him. "You promised me this wouldn't happen," she hissed, her voice low but full of anger. "Now they're investigating both of us, Marco. What the hell did you get me into?" I could hear Marco's muffled voice on the other end, trying to calm her down, but it wasn't working. Amanda was losing it. "They're talking about freezing my accounts," she cried. "I could lose everything." That's when it really hit her. This wasn't just a slap on the wrist. The SEC wasn't going to walk away. And for the first time, she realized how deep she was in. I stayed quiet, pretending to be supportive, while she tried to piece everything together. She still didn't suspect me. As far as she knew, I was the doting husband, trying to help her through the worst mistake of her life. But in the background, I was finishing the job. I continued moving money, covering my tracks, making sure when the hammer finally fell, I'd be standing clean on the other side. And then it happened. A week after the SEC started their investigation, the police showed up at our door. I was in the living room when I heard the knock. Amanda answered, looking pale as a ghost. 2 officers stood there, along with an agent from the SEC. "Amanda Pierce?" one of the officers asked. She nodded, barely able to speak. "You're under arrest for insider trading and fraud. Please come with us." The look on her face, complete shock, disbelief, it was almost worth everything. Almost. Watching Amanda get arrested felt surreal. She stood there, frozen, while the officers explained her rights. I don't think she even fully processed what was happening until they put the cuffs on her. That's when she snapped out of it. "Wait. No. This has to be a mistake," she cried, turning to me, her eyes wide with panic. "Jack, do something. Tell them this is wrong." I just stood there, trying to look as confused as she expected me to be. Inside, though, I felt a cold satisfaction. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment she'd have to face the consequences of everything she'd done, not just to me but to herself. "I'll call the lawyer," I told her, trying to keep my voice steady, like I was trying to help. "It'll be okay." But we both knew it wouldn't be. The officers led her out of the house, and the neighbors were already peeking out of their windows. I could feel their eyes on me as I followed her outside, pretending to be the devastated husband. The officer helped her into the back of the police car, and in a matter of minutes, she was gone. The second the car turned the corner, I went back inside and grabbed my phone. I had one more call to make. Marco. I waited until the evening to make the call, giving the police and SEC time to reach him first. I knew they'd be tracking his every move now, but this call wasn't for them. This was for me. When he picked up, I didn't waste time. "Marco, it's Jack." There was a long pause on the other end, and I could hear the tension in his voice when he finally spoke. "Jack, listen, I don't know what you think you've heard, but I didn't." "Save it," I cut him off. "I know everything. I know about you and Amanda. The texts, the emails. All of it. Silence. You two thought you could play me for a fool. Thought I'd just sit here while you screwed around behind my back. Well, guess what? Now it's your turn." He was quiet for a long time before he finally said, "What the hell are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the SEC, Marco. About the insider trading charges. Amanda's already been arrested, and I'm guessing they're coming for you next. You should probably get your affairs in order." I could practically hear his heart drop. You set this up?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Yeah," I said, cold and steady. "I did. And now you're going to pay for what you did to me." Before he could respond, I hung up. I wasn't interested in hearing his excuses or apologies. The trap was set, and there was no way out for him. After I hung up on Marco, I sat back and waited. I didn't have to wait long. The next morning, the news broke: Marco had been arrested. Turns out, he tried to run. The idiot must have panicked after my call, because when the police showed up at his place, he wasn't there. They caught him trying to leave the country a few hours later, hiding out at a friend's beach house, bags packed, ready to board a private jet. It was perfect. His attempt to flee only made him look guiltier. That afternoon, I saw his face on the news. The headlines were splashed everywhere: real estate mogul arrested for fraud, insider trading scandal, and my personal favorite, high-flying businessman brought down in major investigation. Seeing him in handcuffs, looking scared out of his mind, was satisfying in a way I can't really describe. Amanda had already been thrown into the fire, and now Marco was going to burn right alongside her. That evening, I got a call from Amanda's lawyer. She was still in custody, awaiting bail. The lawyer, some hotshot she hired when things started going south, tried to sound reassuring, but I could hear the doubt in his voice. The evidence was overwhelming, he said. Emails, financial records, suspicious credit card activity. Everything pointed to Amanda and Marco working together in some kind of fraud scheme. I played my part, acting like the concerned husband who didn't understand how his wife could be involved in something like this. There's no way Amanda would do this, I said, keeping my voice steady, like I was holding on to hope. She's not that kind of person. He gave me the usual lawyer spiel. We'll fight this, we'll get through it, but I knew the truth. They were screwed, and there was nothing he could do to save her. When I hung up, I felt a strange mix of emotions. On one hand, there was satisfaction. Things were unfolding exactly as I planned. But on the other, there was something else. Maybe it was the finality of it all, knowing that Amanda and Marco were truly finished. There was no going back now. But regret? No, I didn't feel any of that. They deserved this. For the next few days, the fallout continued. Amanda was released on bail, but she was a wreck. She came home, pale and shaking, her confidence completely shattered. It was the first time in years I'd seen her so vulnerable, and part of me almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered all the late nights, the lies, the way she'd looked at Marco with that smile she used to reserve for me. Whatever sympathy I might have had for her was gone. I don't know how this happened, she said over dinner one night, her voice small, like she was talking to herself more than me. I don't understand. I just nodded, pretending to listen, but inside I was miles away, thinking about my next move. Amanda was falling apart. It was written all over her face. Every sleepless night, every anxious glance at her phone, every time she winced when another email or call came in from her lawyer. The confidence she used to have, that cocky smile she flashed when things were going her way, was gone. She tried to keep up appearances for a while, acting like she could fix it. We just need to clear this up, she'd say, pacing the living room with her phone in hand. It's a misunderstanding. But as more evidence piled up against her, her optimism faded. I played my part perfectly, comforting her, pretending like I didn't know what she had done. I was the supportive husband, doing everything I could to help, even though I knew there was no helping her. One evening, she came home from another meeting with her lawyer, her face pale, eyes sunken like she hadn't slept in days. They froze my accounts, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. What do you mean? I asked, playing dumb, even though I already knew. They're saying I was involved in insider trading. They have emails, Jack. Emails between me and Marco, talking about deals I shouldn't have mentioned. Her voice cracked. I don't know how they got those emails. I nodded, pretending to be confused. Are you sure there's nothing you're leaving out? She looked at me, tears welling up in her eyes. I swear, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Marco. I thought he was just a client. I didn't think, she trailed off, unable to finish. I had to fight back the urge to laugh. All those times she'd lied, all those secret meetings with Marco, and now here she was, coming apart at the seams, trying to make sense of a mess she didn't even know I created. I'll help you get through this, I said, reaching across the table to hold her hand. She squeezed it tight, her eyes pleading with me, desperate for comfort. Inside, I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. This was exactly what she deserved. Part 9. The Unraveling. Amanda was falling apart. It was written all over her face. Every sleepless night, every anxious glance at her phone, every time she winced when another email or call came in from her lawyer. The confidence she used to have, that cocky smile she flashed when things were going her way, was gone. She tried to keep up appearances for a while, acting like she could fix it. We just need to clear this up, she'd say, pacing the living room with her phone in hand. It's a misunderstanding. But as more evidence piled up against her, her optimism faded. I played my part perfectly, comforting her, pretending like I didn't know what she had done. I was the supportive husband, doing everything I could to help, even though I knew there was no helping her. One evening, she came home from another meeting with her lawyer, her face pale, eyes sunken like she hadn't slept in days. They froze my accounts, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. What do you mean? I asked, playing dumb, even though I already knew. They're saying I was involved in insider trading. They have emails, Jack. Emails between me and Marco, talking about deals I shouldn't have mentioned. Her voice cracked. I don't know how they got those emails. I nodded, pretending to be confused. Are you sure there's nothing you're leaving out? She looked at me, tears welling up in her eyes. I swear, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Marco. I thought he was just a client. I didn't think, she trailed off, unable to finish. I had to fight back the urge to laugh. All those times she'd lied, all those secret meetings with Marco, and now here she was, coming apart at the seams, trying to make sense of a mess she didn't even know I created. I'll help you get through this, I said, reaching across the table to hold her hand. She squeezed it tight, her eyes pleading with me, desperate for comfort. Inside, I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. This was exactly what she deserved. Meanwhile, Marco wasn't faring any better. The news of his arrest had spread fast, and his reputation was in ruins. His business partners distanced themselves from him, his clients disappeared, and the press tore him apart. His flashy lifestyle, the expensive cars, the high-end properties, it was all crashing down around him. And the best part? He had no idea that I was the one who set him up. He thought this was just some terrible twist of fate, a random investigation that spiraled out of control. I knew better. Every time I saw his name in the news, I felt a little more vindicated. The man who had taken my wife from me was now watching his life burn to the ground, and I was the one holding the match. Amanda started talking about leaving, about selling the apartment and moving somewhere quiet, away from the city, away from the whispers and the rumors. But I had already planned for that. The apartment, our home, the place we'd built together, wasn't hers anymore. I had already started the process of selling it, transferring the deed to my name alone while she was too distracted to notice. She had no idea that the money she thought we had, the savings, the assets, it was already gone, moved into accounts she couldn't touch. She was living in a house of cards, and the wind was about to blow. Amanda's breakdown was slow but inevitable. Every day, she became more distant, more panicked. She stopped going to work. Her once powerful career had crumbled under the weight of the investigation, and no one wanted to be associated with her anymore. It was like watching someone drown in slow motion. The fake bravado she put on at first, saying they'd clear things up, that it was all a misunderstanding, had disappeared. She started drinking more, hiding in the bedroom, avoiding calls from her lawyer. She knew she was trapped, and there was no way out. And me? I was still playing my role, still comforting her, but now with one foot already out the door. The day I decided to make my final move, Amanda was sitting in the kitchen, staring blankly out the window. She hadn't even noticed I'd come in. Amanda, I said softly, breaking her out of her daze. We need to talk. She looked at me with tired eyes, like she was too exhausted to care about whatever I was going to say. What is it now? She mumbled. I've been thinking, I started, pretending to hesitate. Maybe it's time we sell the apartment. It's too much with everything going on, and we could use the money to cover legal fees, maybe get a fresh start somewhere else. Her face twisted with confusion, and for a moment, I could see a spark of the old Amanda, the one who used to have control of everything. Sell the apartment? Jack, this is our home. We can't just leave. I shrugged, playing innocent. With everything going on, I just thought. No, she interrupted, shaking her head. No, we can't sell. This is the last thing I have left. I won't let it go. That's when I knew I had to break it to her. Amanda. I already started the process. The apartment's under my name now. I've been moving the money out of our accounts. Her eyes widened, her breath caught in her throat. What? She whispered, like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. I've been preparing for this, I said, my voice steady, cold. I knew things were going to fall apart, so I took steps to protect myself. The apartment is mine. The money is mine. There's nothing left for you. She stood up, knocking her chair over in the process. You what? How could you? Because I knew, I said, cutting her off. I knew about you and Marco. I knew you were cheating. I knew you were lying to me for months. Her face drained of all color. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. All those nights you thought you were being so clever, sneaking around, sending your little texts, meeting up with him? I knew. I played along, Amanda, just like you thought you were playing me. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't stop. You thought you could betray me, throw away everything we had, and walk away clean? No. You and Marco both deserved this. She finally found her voice, her words shaky, barely above a whisper. Jack, please. It's over, Amanda. The apartment is already being sold, and the money is gone. You're going to prison. Marco is going to prison. And me? I'm free. For the first time, she was speechless. She just stood there, trembling, the reality of what I'd done sinking in. Without another word, I turned and walked out, leaving her standing in the wreckage of the life she thought she had. Walking out of that apartment was like shedding old skin. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Amanda was done, and so was I. The next few days were a blur of final steps, making sure everything I'd set up was locked in. I transferred the last of the money from the accounts and finalized the sale of the apartment. I even booked myself a one-way ticket out of the city. Amanda, on the other hand, was spiraling out of control. She called me a dozen times, leaving frantic voicemails, sobbing, begging me to reconsider, saying we could still fix things. But there was nothing left to fix. I ignored every single one of those calls. The day the apartment officially sold, I was already gone, on my way to a new life, free from all the baggage of the past. Amanda and Marco were now nothing but a memory, and not a pleasant one at that. A couple of weeks later, the trial started. The evidence I had planted, those fake emails, the fraudulent paper trails, was airtight. It didn't take long for the case to build against Amanda and Marco. Insider trading, fraud, financial crimes that carried serious jail time. They were both guilty as hell, and the prosecution was relentless. I didn't attend the trial. I didn't need to see it unfold in person. The news covered it well enough. Seeing Marco in a suit, sitting next to his lawyer, looking pale and defeated, knowing he was going away for good, was enough for me. As for Amanda, she tried to play the victim. Claimed she didn't know what was happening, that Marco had manipulated her. But it didn't matter. The evidence was overwhelming, and she couldn't escape it. Her lawyer tried to cut a deal, but it was too late. When the verdict finally came, it was everything I'd hoped for. Marco got 15 years, Amanda got 10. They'd be behind bars, paying for what they did, while I'd be free, living my life without them. Part 11, A New Beginning. Walking out of that apartment was like shedding old skin. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Amanda was done, and so was I. The next few days were a blur of final steps, making sure everything I'd set up was locked in. I transferred the last of the money from the accounts and finalized the sale of the apartment. I even booked myself a one-way ticket out of the city. Amanda, on the other hand, was spiraling out of control. She called me a dozen times, leaving frantic voicemails, sobbing, begging me to reconsider, saying we could still fix things. But there was nothing left to fix. I ignored every single one of those calls. The day the apartment officially sold, I was already gone, on my way to a new life, free from all the baggage of the past. Amanda and Marco were now nothing but a memory, and not a pleasant one at that. A couple of weeks later, the trial started. The evidence I had planted, those fake emails, the fraudulent paper trails, was airtight. It didn't take long for the case to build against Amanda and Marco. Insider trading, fraud, financial crimes that carried serious jail time. They were both guilty as hell, and the prosecution was relentless. I didn't attend the trial. I didn't need to see it unfold in person. The news covered it well enough. Seeing Marco in a suit, sitting next to his lawyer, looking pale and defeated, knowing he was going away for good, was enough for me. As for Amanda, she tried to play the victim. Claimed she didn't know what was happening, that Marco had manipulated her. But it didn't matter. The evidence was overwhelming, and she couldn't escape it. Her lawyer tried to cut a deal, but it was too late. When the verdict finally came, it was everything I'd hoped for. Marco got 15 years, Amanda got 10. They'd be behind bars, paying for what they did, while I'd be free, living my life without them. Once the trial was over, I sold the last of my things, packed up what little I wanted to keep, and disappeared. I moved to a new city, changed my number, and started over. I didn't want any reminders of the life I had before. Not the marriage, not the betrayal, none of it. People always say that revenge doesn't make you feel better, that it leaves you empty. Maybe for some people that's true, but not for me. For me, it was like taking control of my life again, like reclaiming something that had been stolen from me. I never felt regret for what I did. They deserved it. Every second of it. Now, I had a fresh start. A new life. And this time, no one would take that from me. It's strange, The first few days of real freedom. After years of living with Amanda's lies, constantly wondering what she was doing behind my back, I found myself waking up each morning with no weight on my shoulders. No tension. No fake smiles. Just peace. I moved into a small but decent place, nothing like the apartment I shared with Amanda, but it felt right. It was mine, and it wasn't filled with the ghosts of a broken marriage. I'd wake up early, go for a run, make coffee, and start working on freelance web design projects. For the first time in years, I was living life for myself. It felt damn good. The news of Amanda's conviction was everywhere. Marco's too. I didn't need to watch the trial to know the outcome. It was all over the papers, on TV, even trending online. High-profile businesswoman Amanda Pierce sentenced to 10 years for insider trading. Real estate mogul Marco Delgado sentenced to 15 years. I couldn't help but feel a deep satisfaction every time I saw their names mentioned. People who knew them were shocked. Amanda had been a rising star in her industry, someone people looked up to. But now, she was just another criminal, another headline. And Marco? The golden boy of real estate was now just another fraudster going to prison. What made it even sweeter was knowing they had no idea how it all unraveled. They thought it was bad luck, maybe some oversight that got them caught. They would never know that it was me who orchestrated the whole thing. I didn't talk to anyone from my old life. Not Amanda, not her family, not even my friends who had been there through the marriage. I just let it all fade away, like a chapter in a book that I didn't need to revisit. One night, about a month after the sentencing, I got an email from Amanda. She must have written it from prison. It was short, barely a paragraph, but I could sense the desperation in every word. Jack, I know you're angry, and I don't blame you. But I need you to know that I never meant for things to end like this. I made mistakes, terrible ones, but I never wanted to hurt you like this. Please, if you can find it in your heart, write me back. I need to hear from you. Amanda. I stared at the email for a long time. Part of me wondered if I should respond. Maybe gloat, maybe let her know that I was behind everything. But then I realized something. I didn't need to. She was already paying the price, and whatever she was feeling now was enough. I deleted the email without replying. She didn't deserve my attention. Not anymore. As the weeks turned into months, I started settling into my new life. I worked hard, saved money, and started thinking about what the future might look like. No more looking back. No more thinking about Amanda or Marco. They were gone, and I was finally free. Months passed, and Amanda and Marco became a distant memory. Life took on a rhythm, quiet, simple, and for the first time in years, genuinely mine. I'd gotten better at keeping busy with work, taking on more freelance projects, and slowly expanding my client base. I was good at it, better than I gave myself credit for. During all those years I was just the supportive husband. I didn't date. Not at first, anyway. The idea of trusting someone again after what I went through with Amanda seemed impossible. Anytime I thought about getting close to someone, I could still hear Amanda's voice lying to me, see her smile as she snuck off to meet Marco. I wasn't ready to let anyone in, not after everything. But one day, I met someone. Her name was Lisa. She was a graphic designer who'd hired me to build a website for her new business. It was supposed to be a quick, professional exchange, emails, some calls, and done. But there was something about the way she talked, the way she looked at life. She wasn't flashy or overconfident like Amanda. She was easy to talk to, down to earth, and real. It caught me off guard. We finished the project, but we kept talking. Casual at first, just friendly. Then it became more, little by little. Lunch here, coffee there. She had no idea about my past, and I liked that. I liked that she saw me as just Jack, the guy who built her website. Not the guy who'd been through a betrayal so deep it almost destroyed him. One evening, Lisa and I were having dinner at a quiet little place downtown. Nothing fancy, just a small, local spot with good food. We'd been talking for hours, laughing about silly things, and for the first time in a long time, I felt light. Like the weight I'd been carrying had finally started to lift. As we finished dinner, she looked at me, her eyes soft but curious. "You never talk about your past much," she said, her voice gentle. "Not that you have to, but I get the sense there's more to you than you let on." I paused, unsure of how to respond. Part of me wanted to tell her everything, to lay it all out there and let her know the truth. But another part of me, the part that had been burned, wanted to keep it buried. "I've been through some stuff," I said finally, keeping it vague. "Some things I'd rather not get into right now." She nodded, not pushing me. "I get that. We all have things we don't want to revisit." That's what I liked about her. No pressure. No drama. Just understanding. As the weeks went on, Lisa and I grew closer. I wasn't in love, not yet, but I was starting to see that maybe, just maybe, I could let someone in again. She wasn't Amanda, and that was exactly what I needed. We didn't rush into anything, and I was careful. But for the first time since Amanda's betrayal, I started to believe in the possibility of happiness again. A real, genuine kind of happiness, not the fake kind Amanda and I pretended to have. I wasn't sure where things would go with Lisa, but I knew one thing for certain: I wasn't the same guy I used to be. I was stronger, smarter, and I had learned the hardest lesson life could throw at me. And this time, I was ready for whatever came next. As things with Lisa grew, I found myself in unfamiliar territory, opening up, little by little. It wasn't easy. Every time she asked about my past, I felt that knot in my stomach tighten. But she never pushed, never demanded answers. I appreciated that more than I could say. One night, we were sitting on my couch, a glass of wine in her hand, a beer in mine, just talking about nothing in particular. The way she looked at me, calm, no judgment, just there. It made me feel safe in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. Safer than I ever felt with Amanda. I decided it was time. "There's something I need to tell you," I said, my voice quieter than usual. She tilted her head slightly, giving me that patient look she always had. "I'm listening." "I was married before," I started, already feeling the weight of it. Amanda. That was her name. We were together for years, and it didn't end well. Lisa didn't flinch, didn't react the way I half expected someone to. She just nodded, encouraging me to go on. "She cheated on me," I continued, trying to keep my voice steady. "With some guy she worked with. Mako. They had this whole affair, and when I found out, it was like my whole world collapsed." Lisa's eyes softened, and I could tell she understood without me needing to explain every detail. Instead of confronting her, I did something I'm not proud of, I admitted, running a hand through my hair. "I planned everything out. I moved our money, set them up for insider trading. Framed them, basically." I watched her closely, waiting for the moment she'd pull back, but she didn't. She stayed right where she was, listening. "They both went to prison," I said, my voice almost a whisper now. "I didn't just ruin their lives, I destroyed them." There was a long silence between us, the kind that could have gone either way. I braced myself for her to stand up, leave, or say something like, "That's too much." But instead, Lisa reached over and put her hand on mine. "That must have been hard," she said softly. "And I'm sorry you went through that." I blinked, not sure if I'd heard her right. No judgment, no shock, just understanding. "You're not mad?" I asked, genuinely confused. She shook her head. "I'm not here to judge your past, Jack. You did what you thought you had to do at the time. What matters is who you are now, and from what I can see, you're a good man." I felt something inside me loosen. The wall I'd built so carefully after Amanda's betrayal wasn't necessary with Lisa. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. After that night, things with Lisa changed. I felt closer to her, more open. I wasn't hiding anything anymore. She knew the worst thing about me, the revenge I'd taken, the lengths I'd gone to, and she hadn't run. I started to trust her in a way I didn't think I'd be able to again. And with that trust came something else: hope. Hope that maybe I could move on from the bitterness and anger that had fueled me for so long. Hope that maybe I could have a life that wasn't about revenge, but about rebuilding, about finding something real. Life was settling into a new kind of normal. Lisa and I spent more time together, and I was finally starting to feel like I could look forward, not backward. I still didn't regret what I did to Amanda and Marco, but I realized that part of my life was over. They were gone, and I was free to live without them haunting me. Things with Lisa kept growing in ways I hadn't expected. I found myself letting her in more, trusting her in ways that I never thought I'd be able to after everything with Amanda. It wasn't just about her understanding my past, it was about the future we were starting to build together, one that had nothing to do with betrayal or revenge. It was simple. It was real. One night, we were sitting by the window in my apartment, the city lights glowing softly outside. Lisa leaned her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt content. No knots in my stomach, no buried anger. Just peace. As we sat there in the quiet, she broke the silence. "Do you ever think about them?" she asked, her voice soft, not accusatory, just curious. I didn't have to ask who she meant. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But not like I used to." "Do you regret it?" She didn't sound like she was fishing for the right answer, just trying to understand. I thought about that for a minute. The truth was, I didn't. What I did to Amanda and Marco wasn't something I lost sleep over. They deserved what they got, plain and simple. But what surprised me, sitting there with Lisa, was that the anger I used to feel, the fire that drove me to tear them down, had faded. I wasn't carrying that weight anymore. "No," I said honestly. "I don't regret it. But I don't need it anymore either." She smiled a little, nodding like she already knew. "You've moved on." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Yeah, I have." And I meant it. The years I spent planning, calculating, and watching Amanda and Marco fall were a chapter in my life, but it wasn't the whole book. I used to think that getting revenge was the end game, the only way to move on. But sitting there with Lisa, I realized it wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about what came after. Amanda and Marco were paying for what they did, but I wasn't tied to them anymore. I wasn't the broken husband left behind, or the man plotting in the shadows. I was just me. And for the first time, that was enough. Months passed, and life with Lisa grew into something I never thought I'd have again. A relationship built on trust, respect, and real care. She didn't see me as damaged or bitter. She saw me as Jack, the man who had been hurt but healed. The man who had let go of his past without losing himself. I didn't know where the future with Lisa would lead, but for the first time in years, I was okay with that. I didn't need everything planned out, didn't need control over every detail. I could let life happen. And that, in itself, was freedom. As I looked out over the city that night, Lisa's head still resting on my shoulder, I knew I'd closed the chapter on Amanda and Marco for good. They were behind me, and all that lay ahead was a clean slate. And this time, I was ready for it.